So what is a sustainable food city? I leave that to you. But what I would say, it's a direction rather than a destination. You know, you never reach sustainable, but you can keep going in the right direction. So it's also therefore more about a process than us saying, you should be doing this. Each place needs to express it in its own way. But particularly, it's about that cross-sector collaboration around a joint vision. And the thing that's not happened before, I think, mostly, is this cross-sector collaboration. Historically, particularly for us, where we work in the voluntary sector, there has been a disconnect between voluntary and public sector. But we're starting to see that kind of grassroots and the top-down bit come together in quite an interesting way. And that's quite powerful when you're dealing with big business, industrial agriculture. We've got the 5 themes there, the 5 petals of sustainability. We also came up with 10 principles. I'm not going to give you the detail here. They're far too long, but we can give you all this information later on. The idea of the 10 principles is to make sure that people, in a sense, get a full sense of the breadth of all the different aspects of sustainability so they can consider it in the round. There's also, very quickly, something around visibility. Anywhere that's developing a sustainable food city initiative, you see stuff on the ground. You see, we think about Incredible Edible. That's an aversion of it. That's the whole point of Incredible Edible. You see it wherever you go in a city. You start to feel an association with food in its natural growing space. There's also something about food democracy. I think that in some ways, food provides the best possible opportunity for us to express our democratic right. We buy or we eat food 3 times a day, every day of our lives, normally. There's many things you can't drive against. What are we going to do about energy policy or transport infrastructure? But we can do something around food. But there's also the democracy of people being able to take ownership of food where they live. People should be able to come together as groups and say, no, we don't want another fast food chain there or another Tesco's. Or they should be able to say, yeah, we want to take that piece of brownfield site and turn it into a fantastic growing space. And there's also something about food ecology. I can't remember who described this to me, but it really, really works for me in my head. The way it described the current food system is that it's like the equivalent of a monoculture in agriculture. It's just big, sort of uniform dinosaurs. A healthy food ecology is going to be about having a full range of different size producing, different size processing, different size selling, different size retails. It's about variety in the system. And that variety then provides resilience within the system. And I think that's, if you look at the development of food deserts, for example, you have these big out-of-town shopping places that many people go to and can go to, and then you have food deserts, where people cannot access any good food at all. And I think there's also something around this debate about whether we should be looking at food culture or the food system. And I keep saying, no, you can't look at one or the other. You have to look at both, because there's this constant reinforcement loop. It's demand and supply. You think about how the supermarkets work, and they say, oh, the customer is king and we're just providing what they need. And you're saying, no, you're deciding what goes on the shelves. Organic has had this so clearly. The supermarkets have decided, we're going to delist organic a little bit. So how am I supposed to buy organic? So there's something about working on both sides of that. So very, very quickly, I'm going to go through, there are some sort of common themes, common principles or approaches that seem to happen in all of the sustainable food cities that we've been working in. And the first one is this broad cross-sector partnership. Now, they go from very informal, often that is the case at the start of the process, to something quite formal. So if you look at Brighton and Hove Food Partnership, for example, it's a legally constituted body. It has terms of reference. It has a bank account. It has a turnover of 750,000 a year. It has a membership. The members of the board are voted on by that membership. But at the other end of the scale, when we started in Plymouth, we had about 10, 12 people sat around a table who were just interested in food and wanted to get on with it. But you do need something. And that group of people needs to have enthusiasm and expertise in, I would say, equal measure, maybe more around enthusiasm than expertise. There's no point having experts if they're not interested. There's something about really focusing on the structure and the purpose and the focus of these sorts of things, but you also need those porous boundaries. So if I give Bristol as an example, there's a food policy council in Bristol, there's 12 people involved in that, but then we've also got the Bristol Food Network. Now that's 500 plus individuals and organisations. So we're trying to make sure that that little governance body is answering to and communicating with that wider set of people within the town or city. And of course you need public legitimacy, however you're going to get that, and you need a political mandate. There's lots of examples where these sort of little small governance bodies have set themselves up and they have not had any kind of mandate at any point from the local authority or whoever. We need to buy in those big institutions if we're going to see change. But what we shouldn't be doing is waiting for those institutions to say, oh yes, you can do this. Do it anyway. And that's what we did in Plymouth. We just started, and when we got to the point where we were going to launch a food charter, we said, are you sure you don't want to be part of this? And of course, one of the political leaders went, oh, can I speak at this event? Marvellous. And so they became part of the process. Second critical element, a vision or a set of principles. This is a really good example of a terrible vision. And it's not just because you can't read it. You wouldn't be able to read it if you had it in good print because you'd just fall asleep quite quickly. So this is written, it's about 4 of these pages. And it's written by someone in Bristol local authority, in local authority language, against local authority strategies, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't even define what sustainability is. So with a bit of prompting, we said, look, come on, make this a public document, let's engage people, let's get something vibrant, let's create a brand and some, et cetera, that we can get people excited about. So this is Bristol's new Good Food Charter. Now, everything that they are doing in Bristol, they are trying to pull under this header of Bristol Good Food. A strategy and an action plan. Sounds boring, but you do have to get something down on paper eventually. There's no point having a vision if it's just going to sit there and it doesn't turn into reality. You get some very long strategies that sit on shelves. I could mention a few cities, but I won't embarrass them. And you get some very nice, short, tight action plans. It's up to you guys about what you want to do, and maybe some things work better at different phases of the process. Probably the most advanced version in the UK, Brighton and Hove, fantastic. So the one on the left, I can't remember when it was published exactly, but say 7 years ago, incredibly detailed, very clear targets, 5 years, a 5-year program, reviewed their impact, their success, hit most of their targets, produced a second one. They're now delivering the one on the right. But they are really, really focused. I would show you, I haven't got it here, but Plymouth took a much more simple thing, which I had to hold you up an A3 sheet of paper. And that's all it is. But it's important you've got something, and the other thing that's really critical is that it's a rolling document. So the idea is that that governance body helps to produce that action plan and then reviews it on a quarterly basis. How are we doing? What can we add in? Where's another opportunity? Can we unblock some of the issues? This, to me, is the most important bit. And it's the bit that's most often missing. Now, forgive me for people who work in public health. I think you do an amazing job in incredibly difficult circumstances. But one of the problems that public health has is that I think the tone of trying to get people to eat 5 a day, et cetera, is really hard. It's a very hard pitch. And I think the British public are going, oh, just leave me alone. What we need is a really positive public engagement programme. We need to make food exciting, enjoyable, tasty. We need to break down cultural boundaries. We need to have events all over the place. We need people to re-engage with food because they want to, because it gives them benefit, social benefit particularly. And the thing that I always compare to is I think about, and I'm not holding the Mediterranean countries up as a paragon of virtue, but you go there and you see that food is right at the heart of their social construct, and it isn't here. It's just become a commodity. We stuff this stuff in our tasteless stuff into our mouths, sitting at our computer screens. I do it. It's awful. The whole point of life is social convivium. It's about sitting down and enjoying yourself. And yet the most fundamental part of that convivium we have turned into high salt, sugar, fat, pap, to be honest. I love what Plymouth have done this because they have looked at the public engagement thing as the most important element, and they've done that right from the outset. So they've created this image, they've created this brand. You know, for those who've been to Plymouth, that's the lighthouse on the Hoe. It's very, very iconic. It's very, very much about Plymouth. And it's about getting people to think about Plymouth and food in a proud way, in an engaged way. But they've also really focused on lots and lots and lots of comms and engagement stuff on a rolling basis. So there's always something happening. We've got the Plymouth Food Awards happening at the moment, you know, but the week after there'll be another event, or there'll be a festival, or there'll be a market, or whatever else. You need to bring food back into the heart of the city. And that's what I think they're doing really well there. I mean, I call it this, creating a food identity of place. I think if you can do that, you're kind of getting there. Don't bother reading all of this. All I wanted to do was say, in the places that we have seen this happening, we are starting to see significant change on the ground. I'm going to be honest, we are scratching the surface. We have got 50 years of heritage of industrial food. It will take an awful lot to change the direction of, what do they call it? The supertanker. But I am seeing change on the ground. This is not just about, let's have a pretty vision and then 5 minutes longer move on to something else. I think you can change the world. All of these towns and cities agree. We started this process, Brighton, Bristol, Manchester, London, Plymouth were the only places developing and delivering citywide sustainable food programs 2.5 years ago. We had an event in Bristol in 2011, we had another one in Edinburgh shortly after, then Cardiff, then Belfast. All of the names that you can see there, plus probably another 15 or 20, we get them coming to us every day, are either starting or in the process of developing some kind of cross-sector collaborative city food program, because they think they can do something really significant with it. I'm hoping you guys will be part of that. I find working in the food sector, as many of you probably do, really hard. You know, there's a lot of very powerful interests out there. There's an awful lot of things that would tell us that you can't change things. And more often, I meet people like this. That's Brad Pearce. I know he looks like he's out of EastEnders, but he's not. Brad Pearce is the head of the Plymouth Local Education Catering Service. As you can imagine, with public cuts and all the rest of it, the last thing you probably want to be doing when you're working in public health and public catering is say, you know, we need to increase the price per meal because we need to give them really good quality food. So whilst everyone's getting their head down behind the parapet, Brad's going, oh, I don't care. I'm just going to do it anyway. Brad's was the first service in the UK to get catering marked gold. Now that is an extraordinary achievement. And he hasn't even stopped there. In order to make it stack up financially, he's now decided he's going to go move into, because basically it's about volumes, he's looking into doing Meals on Wheels. He's looking into doing food service for other parts of the city. But it's people like him you just meet and go, and he's just got this attitude. And I keep meeting him, I keep thinking, yeah, you're giving me good energy, man. And I'm sure there's people like that in this room and beyond. But ultimately, if we're going to change the food system, we've got to have that attitude. Caroline, where's Caroline? You talked about anger earlier. I'm a very angry person, and I think we should all be more angry. What frustrates me is that we tend to be actually quite apathetic. So when we think about that situation in America and the system which has become so dysfunctional that actually they're spending billions of pounds treating people for diseases because they're subsidising a system that creates diseases, not something you would create in a million years if you were on a blank sheet of paper, the question I'm asking myself is why are they doing that? And for me, it's because they've been allowed to do it. It's all, for me, about the exercise of power. Now, the exercise of power is about, do you understand the problem? Well, I'm sorry, guys, but having listened to you today, you do understand the problem, so you haven't got that excuse. Do you realise that you all have power? Most people don't. But in food, you do. You buy it every day. If you're a teacher, a parent, a student, you can change the food in that institution. If you're a producer, a processor, a retailer, you can change it in that supply chain. If you're an employer or an employee, you can change the food that's being eaten. Every single person here could go out tomorrow and make a change to the system and to the culture that sits behind it. The question is whether we can be bothered to exercise our power. Now, it's quite hard. We've got very busy people. There's an awful lot, of distractions around for us. But maybe we can use this as the start of a process where we support each other in working together to start to change the system. Now, one of the things that I think that's really come out of today is when you hear about all of the amazing stuff that is already happening on the ground. The problem is people don't know about it. So this is as much about starting to bring all of that stuff together and shout about it and put it under a big umbrella and say, look what we can do around food to get other people excited, as it is about developing, more stuff, new stuff. I'd love to see you guys come together to develop a common vision around food in Lancaster. I think it could be incredibly powerful. What's also obvious in all of these processes when I've been involved is there are people who are suited to different tasks. There'll be some people who are very good at events, and some people are very good at planning and documents, and some people who have incredible expertise. We've got Bill here. He knows more about food than I will ever hope to learn. You've got all of the things you need to do something really significant in this city. And I will do anything I can to help you do that. That's it.